All right, hey everybody. Um, we're gonna have a test tomorrow, so let's go over the study guide. All right, what is force? Force is a push or pull that acts on an object. Number two, what kind of force does a scale measure? A scale measures weight, which is a force. Remember, weight is measured in newtons, which is a force. It's the force of gravity on an object's mass. That's weight. Number three, what is force measured in? Newtons. How is it abbreviated? With a capital N. Number four, what is a Newton equal to? It's equal to kilograms times meters per second squared. I told you guys that you need to make sure that you understand the difference between a Newton and a momentum. A Newton is equal to a kilograms times meters per second squared, and momentum is equal to kilograms times meters per second. Okay, it's a big difference. All right, five. How can the strength and direction of a force be represented? That it would be arrows. The length of the arrow represents the strength or the magnitude of the force, and then it shows the direction also with the arrows. Number six, how do you combine forces if they are in the same direction? You add them if they're in the same direction. Number seven, if the forces are in opposite directions, you subtract them. Number eight, what is net force? It is the overall force acting on an object after all the forces are combined, either subtracted or added. Number nine, what is a balanced force? All forces that combine to produce a net force of zero. That basically they balance out and cancel out. All right, if a force is balanced, will the object move? No. If the forces are balanced, the net force is zero and there's no movement. So it'd be like if I was pushing on a desk one way going 50 with 50 newtons and the other person was pushing going 50 newtons, it would balance out and then there would be no movement. Number 12, if the force is unbalanced, will it move? Yes, it will accelerate in the direction of the greater force applied. 13, what is friction? It's a force that opposes the motion of objects that touch as they move past each other. 14, what are the four main types of friction? You have static friction, sliding friction, rolling friction, and full fluid friction. Number 15, what is static friction? Is the frictional force that acts on an object that are not moving. So static friction means the objects are not moving. That's what actually holds everything in place. 16, what direction is static friction to the applied friction? Always acts in the direction opposite to that of the applied friction. Number 17, what is sliding friction? It's a force that opposes the direction of motion of an object as it slides over a surface. Again, there were really good pictures in the book for these things. Which is greater friction, sliding or static? Static is always going to be greater. Number 19, what is rolling friction? It's the frictional force that acts on rolling objects. Number 20, which friction uses the least amount of force? Static, rolling, or sliding? It would be rolling friction. I have to use less force to roll something versus sliding it or static friction. All right, what's fluid friction? It's a force that opposes the motion of an object through a fluid. What's considered a fluid? Liquids such as water and a gaseous mixture such as air. So basically liquids and gas. 23, explain how fluid friction is affected by the speed of an object moving through a fluid. Fluid friction increases as the speed of the object moving through the fluid increases, which means the faster the object moves, the greater the friction is. So, like if you're swimming and you go faster, you have to actually overcome more friction. If you go slower, you have to overcome less friction. Or if you're riding a bike, the faster you're riding a bike, you have to overcome more friction if you're doing that. That's why bikers and swimmers try to reduce any kind of drag. So they shave their legs, they wear tight swimsuits, they wear swim caps. People on a bike wear tight clothing, a streamlined helmet. They also crunch down so they're smaller as possible. What is air resistance? It's the fluid friction acting on an object moving through the air. What kind of things can be done to reduce fluid friction or air resistance? Apparently, I just answered that for y'all. Tighter clothes or more streamlined, more aerodynamic, positioning your body to reduce air or water flow. Again, if you're a runner and you're running a track meet, you're not going to wear a big old baggy shirt and big old shorts. You're going to wear something very tight and streamlined. 26. What kind of things can be done to increase fluid friction or air resistance? Those would be parachutes or making your body bigger or spread your arms and legs out. This would be wearing bigger clothes, baggier clothes if you wanted to increase your fluid friction. 27, what is drag? This is on page 370 to 371. Read the terminal speed. It's just another word for air resistance. So drag would be like if you're using a parachute, or swimmers talk about drag because if they're practicing, they wear big old baggy swimsuits or whatever, or 2 or 3 swimsuits. That's drag. Okay, it makes them work harder. You ever seen the football players that run with those parachutes on the back of them? That's creating drag. So it makes them run. It has to work faster. So then when you take it off, you run better. All right, 28. What is gravity? It's a force that acts between any two masses. What direction does gravity act on? It acts downward toward the center of the earth. 30. What is a supporting force? It's an upward force that usually balances the downward gravitational force. 31. Explain the difference between gravity and air resistance. Gravity causes objects to accelerate downward, whereas air resistance acts in the opposite direction to the motion and reduces the acceleration. So gravity is going to be pushing down, and air resistance is going to be basically pushing up. 32. How does a parachute and the flying squirrel's body maximize the force of air resistance, acting it to slow down? The flying squirrel's in your book. It creates a very large surface area and increases the force of air resistance, causing it to slow the downward acceleration. If you look at the book in that picture of the flying squirrel, it's pretty cool. 33. What's terminal velocity? It's the constant velocity of a falling object when the force of air resistance equals the force of gravity. Again, there's a good picture in the book about showing you this. 34. What two forces affect the motion of a falling object? Air resistance and gravity. What is a projectile motion? The motion of a falling object, the projectile, after it is giving an initial forward velocity. So that just means like a push or a kick or a throw or something like that. Or, any of those. 36. What makes the object follow a curved path? The combination of the initial forward velocity and the downward vertical force of gravity causes the ball to follow a curved path. What two forces are acting on the object? Air resistance and gravity. So look at these two questions, 36 and 37. What makes it a curved path? Initial forward velocity and gravity. What are the two forcing acting on it, on the projectile? Air resistance, gravity. Those are two different questions. 38. If you drop a ball and throw a ball at the same time, like on page 362, which will hit the ground first? They will hit the ground at the same time. I'm not talking like if somebody threw a baseball and dropped it right then. I'm talking like on the picture. Someone threw and dropped at the same time. Okay? Look at the picture. All of them will hit the ground at the same time. All right? Just like if you drop a baseball and a tennis ball, they're going to hit the ground at the same time. 39. What does Newton's first law state? The state of motion of an object does not change as long as the net force acting on the object is 0. What is this law also called? The law of inertia. Okay? So Newton's first laws, you got to know the 3 laws. State of motion of an object does not change as long as the net force acting on the object is 0. So if there's no net force acting on it, it's gonna stay. The motion's gonna stay. And that's the law of inertia. All right, I'm going to go to another one. Bye, y'all. See you in a minute.